is really getting so thought-provoking. Are there any other predictions?
Oh yeah, there's several of them. One relates to autism, which is regardless of its cause, the severity of autism is proportional to the percentage of consciousness not fully connected to the body. That's why the controversial therapy that forces patients to make contact with others works, because it draws more of that person's consciousness back into the third dimension, their body. Now the cause could be genetic, an inoculation against illness that causes a temporary reduction in brain capability, or excess sensory input in relation to the brain capability. Essentially anything that interferes with the equal complexity level of a life form and its consciousness in the early development stages that forces the consciousness to partially dislodge from the body. The trouble is, once a partial dislodging has taken place, it'll probably be very difficult to ever get it to fully recede again. Let me make a quick little drawing here. I'm not very good at drawing, but let's say this is a person's head, and this is their body. And normally, for all the rest of us, our consciousness is fully, probably mostly up towards the head, but maybe throughout the body. We really don't know at this point. But the theory here is that once somebody becomes autistic, the consciousness is still in the body, but some of it, a partial amount, is out here. And the severity of the autism is proportional to the percentage that's not fully connected to the body.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. What made you consider autism in relationship to these predictions?
Well, in adulthood, I recalled what I believe was a brush with autism in early childhood from a lack of ability to use up mental stimuli. I was about 3 or 4 years of age, hyperactive, trying to get out all this energy physically by running through the living room, into the kitchen, then the dining room, then back through the living room again. And in this memory, at some point, it was as if my legs had turned to lead. And I stopped running just inside the living room, and it felt like a mental force was about to overwhelm me in a way that would disconnect me from my family. As I look back on it now, I believe that force was a buildup of thought energy that needed to somehow release or I'd become autistic.
Wow. So what happened then?
Not understanding any of this, of course, at the age of 3 or 4, yet with a survival instinct kicking in to try to survive the situation. I created this imaging exercise of randomly rearranging the furniture and pictures in the living room into a multitude of different configurations. Slowly at first, by asking, what if that picture was on that wall and the couch was over there instead? But then at some point, moving all the objects simultaneously, every half second or so, all in my mind, of course, just as I stood there looking out into the living room.
Well, you're certainly not autistic, so do you think this mental exercise helped work to help you not become autistic?
Yes, I could feel whatever force it was dissipating as I progressed with the exercise, and the faster I configured the furniture, the more I could feel it going away. It released the extra energy built up in my mind, successfully avoiding the transition into an autistic state. But also, if we look to this theory for an explanation, we must consider that the exercise increased the complexity of the brain to match the consciousness. Now, it didn't increase it in a measurable, conventional sense. However, with both forms of evolution back in sync, that is equally complex again, I was out of danger from becoming autistic.
Do you have any idea what could have caused such an imbalance?
I wondered, even though those were the early days of TV, if all the visual stimuli could be the root cause of so much thought energy buildup. Maybe the brain isn't developed enough at that age to match the overload of input. It's hard to say.
Well, then do you have any suggestions on ways parents can avoid the onset of autism in their children?
From this understanding of the equally complex rule, the assertion is this: a tenuous balance between brain and consciousness exists in the early development stages of an infant. And we need to be supportive of that symbiosis. Whether that means reducing TV time or avoiding inoculations, which may have mercury in them at too early an age, or finding more ways to help children develop their minds in a healthy way, society needs to be aware of what could cause an imbalance. My suggestion is to give children schematics and a set of different shaped materials to challenge them to build to match those drawings. That'd be a healthy mental exercise, develop complex imaging skills, so the mind matches the needs of the consciousness and releases excess thought energy. You see, you can't run into a problem with a brain that's too capable for its consciousness, but you can the other way around.
Did that experience change you in any way? Your experience?
Yeah, unfortunately in my case, the exercise to release the excess energy involved random configurations. So I became a random dyslexic. In first grade, I got straight D's. In fact, the teacher told me that the only reason she wasn't giving me straight F's was because she didn't want to see me in her class again the following year. Yeah, not a real favorable thing for a teacher to say. It was 1961 in Toronto, Canada, and I was always getting racked on the back of the hand by her with a ruler. It's called corporal punishment, which was eventually outlawed in Canada. She'd grit her teeth and rack me on the back of the hand, then sternly lecture me in front of the other kids about how I was at the bottom of the class and that I better start applying myself like it was a threat rather than a good idea. That was a harsh reality for a 5-year-old, let me tell you.
Well, what was the problem you were having?
All information, including numbers, were randomly organized. I couldn't follow patterns in a linear fashion, and I had trouble paying attention. So maybe I also had attention deficit disorder. Then in the 3rd grade here in California, I was at the bottom of a special class for slow readers because the words lit up randomly. So I could force myself to read a few words in a row, but then I'd have to stop because my mind would insist on reading a word from somewhere else on the page. So I took the book home to practice, and out of some extreme frustration, willed myself to be able to read straight across. But surprisingly found I still retained the ability to play with thoughts randomly, which I tested out with the picture in the book by kind of creating a little video. I thought, I don't want to try it with the words, but how about with the picture? And so I have both abilities, the ability to randomly configure ideas and to think in a linear way.
So you think you also overcame ADD?
Yes, thanks to my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Anderson. She convinced me I was smart, not just paying attention. That she forced me to sit in the front of the class, and she was always on my case. And it paid off because I went from the bottom of the class to the top in that 1 grade.
Wow. Did the ability to randomly play with thoughts help you in any way in working out this theory?
Yes, quite a bit actually. I'm able to set parameters for a question, and then within the field of thought created by the exercise to avoid autism, randomly organize different possible answers. Simultaneously, I use the part of the mind that forged a way to read straight across as the linear viewpoint to recognize good ideas. Fact is, I have to credit the development of this theory with this visualizing technique as a way of problem solving for what were some very deep questions about the universe.
Wow, do you realize how ironic it would be that someone who almost became autistic discovered what autism was a result of?
Yeah, as a result of that exercise, yes, and that whole thing I had to overcome. It was a lot to overcome at a very young age. Very difficult at times. But yeah, how ironic, huh?
Yeah. But it makes sense,
Yeah.
you would know.
A secondary reason I considered autism is because it represents one possible way of measuring conscious magnetism while someone is still alive. Because the consciousness has been partially dislodged, or at least that's the theory. I'm presuming one lobe of the brain is affected more than the other, and that would be the best place to take electromagnetic field readings at varying distances from the head. I haven't tested these on any autistic person, but the question is, are the readings different than those for a person without autism? And I suspect that if you can measure the amount of dislodged conscious magnetism, then force the autistic person's attention, the measurement will slightly decrease as some consciousness temporarily reseats into the body. Interesting, huh?
Very interesting. Food for thought.
Yes.